Welcome to Healing X Outreach Radio. I'm your host, Augustine Asasio. And, welcome back. The last 2 weeks we've been having some retelecasts. I think one was Keith Walker, and the other one was Voices from the Witnesses Now for Jesus Convention, I believe, of 2012, which I had, we had a lunch breakout session, and I just went around the room and was interviewing most of the people that were there at the convention, some of the organizers, and those that were attending. So if you have any plans on going to the Witnesses Now for Jesus convention, I think we're just 1 week away. So you can still go ahead and check them out. The schedule is up at WNFJ-V2.com. That's WNFJ-V2.com. And if you get a chance to go, you'll get to meet Melissa Bramer. She's going to be speaking on Saturday at 3:30 p.m. And the title of her talk is Golden Calf Syndrome, a.k.a. idol worship. So you'll get to meet one of the people that broadcasts here on Blog Talk Radio. And Melissa Bramer, of course, you can catch her program on every second and fourth Tuesday of the month at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. She lives, I think, in the Mountain Time Zone. So, go ahead and get down to the convention. I will be unable to make it this year. And go ahead and check them out. They have, I'll tell you what they do have on the schedule that's really interesting is they have Tim Martin, who's from Watchman Fellowship. He's going to be speaking this year. But they're special guests, I think. I guess if they were to have plenary sessions and a plenary speaker, it would be Rob Bowman. Now, you might say, who's Rob Bowman? Rob Bowman is actually very prolific scholar and theologian author on the topic of Jehovah's Witnesses. He's written several books. Nowadays, he actually still writes on issues like the Trinity and the divinity of Christ. But in the past, he wrote, I think, a book called, based on John 1:1, and he wrote another book called 20 Questions for Jehovah's Witnesses, and another book on why you should believe in the Trinity. So he's written several books geared towards Jehovah's Witnesses. And that's a special treat to have Rob Bowman. He's also speaking on Saturday at 2 o'clock. And Julie McAllen is speaking. She's from ForJehovah.org and a good friend of mine, and she's coming on right before Melissa Bramer. And so you'll get to see a couple of the folks there. I think Rob Bowman's also speaking on Sunday on the Lord Jesus and Michael the Archangel, A Closer Look. So go ahead and check out the schedule. It's Friday, October 6th, where they start at 9 a.m., and usually they go around the room and everybody says who they are, what they've been doing, if they've been involved in a ministry or not, geared towards Jehovah's Witnesses, the reason why they're at the convention. And it's up there in the Blue Mountains, and it's a great time for fellowship, for teaching, and for testimonies. And you'll get to hear some testimonies. I think there's a testimony 9:30 Saturday morning from Julie Kelly, and her testimony is entitled God Had Another Plan. So it's great to hear the stories of people that have come out of the cult, specifically the Jehovah's Witnesses, and you can go ahead and check them out. Now, there's also something else coming up, and I want to address that, and we're going to be focusing on them a little more after this week, because the Witnesses Now for Jesus convention, of course, will be on next weekend, and so we're going to be then really promoting an event that's going to be right there near Watchtower headquarters. How near? It's right there in Warwick, and Warwick, New York, is now the headquarters for the Jehovah's Witnesses. They have, I think, pretty much moved out of Brooklyn and Manhattan. They had the Dumbo buildings in Manhattan from really a bunch of dumbos. The governing body are a bunch of dumbos, and so they sold their. I would guess Manhattan was appropriately called the Dumbo buildings. They sold them because they had a bunch of dumbos there, and so the Watchtower headquarters that was based in Manhattan is gone, and most of the buildings, they had 10 blocks in Brooklyn, have pretty much been sold, and ironically, the ones in Brooklyn have mostly been sold to our president through Jared Kushner, which is his son-in-law, who's been handling all the buying of the properties in Brooklyn. So finally now, that area in Brooklyn, which has been tax-free because the Watchtower Society is a 401c religious organization, will now provide the city of New York some taxable organizations and will be property that the citizens of New York can benefit from in two ways. One, by not having a giant cult right there in the middle of Brooklyn and in Manhattan advertising its cult activities. And now they have a compound, and I think it's really appropriate to call it a compound, in Warwick. Now, so with Warwick, I don't know if there's a particular site advertising what's going to be happening there, but I do know there's a GoFundMe page, and if you want to contribute to it, it's the Vast Apostate Army Protest, November 5th, 2017. Actually, it's going to be, I think, on that Sunday is going to be November 5th, but I think they're going to be also doing some activities on the 4th. And the GoFundMe page has gotten a lot of support. They're trying to raise $2,000, and it will go towards, and has been going towards, printing a whole bunch of signs and shirts and things like that for people that are going to attend there, and also to help with some of the costs for some of the main, speakers that are going to be there. I think Zeb is going to be there, and he's going to need a little help getting there. So it's for a good cause. And on the GoFundMe page, which is GoFundMe.com/BAA-protest-November-5th, that's 5th-2017. They say if you donate $30, $30 or more, we will be sending you a care package with a T-shirt and decals. So go ahead and support this great, the Vast Apostate Hour, which is on YouTube. A bunch of guys that have been doing tremendous work as far as what they call now unwitnessing Jehovah's Witnesses. They've actually been, I think they've promoted a more aggressive activism than most have partaken in. And I think Rick Farron from Six Screens might be going there. And I'm still considering maybe not going. I'm really, I haven't made a decision on whether to go, whether it's financially feasible for me to go. But I'm still considering whether I might go because I think it will be a great time to meet some of the younger people that are getting involved in witnessism, and a bunch of guys that are doing great work. I completely support everything that they're doing, and a good mix, actually. They're not all believers. Some are believers, some aren't. But it's been a unifying effort with the Vast Apostate Hour of both believers and people that are not believers working together in unison without any prejudice against one another's because of their beliefs. And so I really like what they're doing there. I like the activism that they've done. It's been aggressive but not aggressive. And what I mean by not aggressive is there are groups of people within the XJW community who speak out against aggressive activism. But these guys, when I mean aggressive activism, that they've gone and they've actually talked to active Jehovah's Witnesses at their little signs where they are, where they have their little portraits, the display counter, whatever, on the sides of the road. And they've actually walked up and talked to Jehovah's Witnesses. Some of them have invaded Kingdom Halls, like Zeb, and even though they've invaded Kingdom Halls, I think some of the things that they said, the way they presented it at the Kingdom Halls, even though it was a disturbance at the Kingdom Hall, it was in good taste. And what I mean by is by what they said. And Zeb has been a forefront warrior on that. We know Derek O'Hare up in the UK does a very aggressive activism. And his is more one-dimensional towards the child pedophilia issue within the Watchtower Society. And so I think that Derek has been very, very aggressive. But because of the issue that he's dealing with is so confrontational and so criminal, I think that it warrants the type of response that Derek O'Hare has committed to at the Kingdom Halls. And I absolutely understand the kind of vehement that involves when we're dealing with Jehovah's Witnesses and they're protecting child molesters. So this is the VAA protest on November 5th at Warwick, New York, which these guys have also spent time writing to churches and making the whole community there aware of what's going to happen on November 5th and letting the community know that right now you have in Warwick a dangerous cult, child molesters, that is death-dealing to its own constituents, its own parishioners, through the blood doctrine, which is misogynistic, abusive, and satanic, which is what we're going to talk a little bit about today. So I think they're doing a great job. The other thing I want to remind everyone is at 5:30, every Saturday, Rick has been on the air and on his conference telenetwork. And if you're really interested on the topic of Jehovah's Witnesses, as far as news and views, and also, I mean, he has every hour, he covers all types of different topics. And I think every other Sunday he deals with more of the religious aspects of the topics. Today on Saturday, 5:30 to 5:30 Eastern Time today, every Saturday, you can go ahead and go on the Six Screens Telenetwork. And the number for that is 712-432-8710. And you'll be prompted to dial 9925. So it's 712-432-8710, and you dial 9925. And if you want to make a comment, you would just hit *1. So you can listen to the Six Screens Telenetwork conference calls tonight at 5:30 Eastern Time. Of course, you're in the UK. That will be much later. I think it's about 3 or 4 hours later for you guys. So it would start at 8:30 in the UK, 8:30 p.m. in the UK. If you're listening in the United Kingdom, you can dial in that number. And he has a very, very large live audience on the Six Screens of the Watchtower, and they also have a video suite. If you go to sixscreensofthewatchtower.com and you can donate, there's a donate button there. Rick has been doing this without a lot of financial support for 12 years, maybe 13 years. We've been doing this for about 10 years here on Blog Talk Radio. So with that being said, I think I've covered all my bases. We have the next hour and maybe 10 or 9 minutes to cover a lot of material. And we are now going into the month of October, and October, of course, is known for its harvest festivals Halloween, also known as All Hallows Eve, and, of course, November 1st is All Saints' Day after All Hallows Eve. And most people really don't know the origins of Halloween and the whole origins of trick-or-treating and everything, but it's very popular here in the United States for it to be basically a celebration of the dead. And it's a celebration of the dead for the secular world in a demonic, satanic kind of way. And for Christians or Catholics, it was supposed to be a celebration of the honored dead of the past. That is, those that have suffered and for the faith, those that have, led their lives for the Christian faith. And All Saints' Day, of course, is November 1st, and it's called All Hallows Eve because it was the evening of holiness. That's what hallow means. Hallowed be thy name, to sanctify or to have a holy evening before All Saints' Day, even though here in America it is largely quite an unholy evening. And churches are doing their utmost to try to win back that holy evening. They do harvest festivals. They do a play called Judgement House. And Judgement House, just look it up on YouTube. Google Judgement House on YouTube. And you'll find that, yes, there are Christian churches that do scenarios which deal with people dying and what's going to happen at Judgment Day on their death. So it's like a play on the old-fashioned haunted house with the haunting being on your life because we have to face death one day, and how we live our lives or what decisions we make on our lives today may have eternal effects on Judgment Day, the day that we would die and we would face God. So that is what Judgment House is all about. And so I thought it would be a great opportunity. I'm gonna do a retelecast, I think, with Marsha, who runs a ministry towards on the New Age and the Occult. So I'm gonna do a retelecast on that. I think in 2 weeks. Next week we're gonna have from Ariel Ministry John Metzger, and Ariel Ministry is a messianic ministry. We're gonna interview him because I think Ariel Ministry's founder, Dr. Arnold Fartenbaum, or Rabbi Arnold Fartenbaum, has one of the most important papers written on the doctrine of the Trinity from a Jewish viewpoint. And if you Google Jewishness and the Trinity, you will get a chance to read that. It may be on some Jews for Jesus or Chosen People Ministries website. It may be on some other websites. But Jewishness and the Trinity was written by Rabbi Arnold Fartenbaum, and he began Ariel Ministries. And John Metzger is going to come and he's going to share with us his testimony, how he got involved in Ariel Ministries, about Arnold Fartenbaum himself. He'll let us know also about the purpose of the ministry, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Trinity in the Old Testament from a Jewish viewpoint. And you will learn a great deal about the Trinity in the Old Testament. You would think, I've never read anything about the Trinity in the Old Testament. Well, it's there. It's there. You just can't see it. It's not on the cover. It's underneath. It's in the Jewish practices and in the language of the Jews of the Old Testament. So we're going to learn a little bit about the Echad, Yachid, and the Elohim, Elohah. So we're going to learn a little bit about Judaism, the language of the Hebrews, some of the texts of Scripture that really give us a sight of Jesus as he is in the New Testament and God as he is as a plurality in the Old Testament. That's going to be really, really great. But now we're going to go into a very lengthy discussion, and please feel free to go ahead and press 1 if you're listening and you want to share something, if you want to make a comment, if you have a certain question about the topic today. We're going to talk about the Watchtower Society's history with the occult, and it is a lengthy history, all the way to the days of Charles Taze Russell, who was not the first president, actually, for the Watchtower Society. He was an editor for the Watchtower Society. Actually, the first president and editor was a guy named C.H. Patton. But Russell had a lot of influences, and he was delving into all kinds of areas. He was delving into the Adventists. He was conversing with Millerites. He was conversing with Second Adventists. His associations were multi-layered. He was associated with Christadelphians, and he was heavily involved in pyramidology. And that's how he wrote his studies in the scriptures. And in the divine plan of the ages, very central to the divine plan of the ages is what he called God's stone witness, the Pyramid of Giza. And he really believed that in the book of Isaiah, it speaks of a stone witness, which is really alluding to Jesus. But he believed it was a pyramid of Giza. And this stone witness was supposed to be in Egypt. We know that Mary and Joseph fled to Egypt when she was pregnant with Jesus because of the census. Now, so he conveys some of those things that really apply to Jesus to the Pyramid of Giza. And there are pictures. If you were to Google Charles Taze Russell and Egypt, you may see pictures of Russell on a camel and the Pyramid of Giza behind him. It'll be right behind him. And some of the things that he had, some of the things accused of Russell, I think, have become more and more clearly confirmed. And one of the things, of course, accused of Russell is the fact that Charles Taze Russell was a pyramidologist. He believed in pyramidology. His central, there's a big photo of Giza in what he called the chart of the ages, and applied certain sections of the pyramid to certain dispensations, and he actually, Jehovah's Witnesses still believe in this idea of 1914 being the time of the invisible presence of Jesus Christ, that Jesus came in 1914, that he was established his kingdom invisibly, even though for years they believed that Jesus was going to establish Armageddon visibly in 1914, and that Jesus was going to destroy all the nations and all the wicked church in 1914. But I'm not going to go in that direction a little bit. I just want to really just show a little bit of how Russell really came to 1914. Jehovah's Witnesses today have this whole chronology based on 606, I think, or 607 BCE of the fall of Babylon, I believe, which is actually ludicrous because I think the Babylonians fell in 586 or 580 BCE, which any encyclopedia will say 586, 587, not 606 or 607. But so they have this crazy chronology, which is confusing enough to deal with. But initially, that was not the chronology that they used to come up with 1914. Russell's chronology had to do with the measurements of the Pyramid of Giza. And this is one of the big epic moments of Watchtower occult history. That is that they derived what they call biblical teaching from the pagan Pyramid of Giza of the Egyptians. And whether or not he legitimately entered into the pyramid, I really don't think he went into the pyramid and measured the interior of the pyramid. I don't even know if it's possible for you to enter into the pyramid in Egypt, or if that would have been allowable if it was possible. But here are what he had wrote in his 1889 edition of Thy Kingdom Come, which is one of his 6 books in the studies of the scriptures. There was supposed to be a 7th, and the 7th one was actually a few notes from him, but largely the work of the editor Clayton J. Woodworth and Joseph Rutherford. So let me go ahead and read this. It's from Thy Kingdom Come, 1889, page 342. And it says, then measuring down the entrance passage from that point to find the distance to the entrance of the pit, representing the great trouble and destruction with which this age is to close. There you go. The age is to close. That means Armageddon was supposed to come. When evil will be overthrown from power, we find it to be 3,416 inches, symbolizing 3,416 years from the above date, BC 1542. This calculation shows AD 1874 as marking the beginning of the period of trouble. Actually, the Bible students still believe 1874 was actually Jesus' invisible presence, and not 1914, what Jehovah's Witnesses believe today. In fact, they believe 1874 was Jesus' invisible presence or invisible coming to power. All the way till 1939. They still believe 1874 was when Jesus came back. So anyway, so let me go back to it. So this calculation shows 1874 as marking the beginning of the period of trouble for 1542 years BC plus 1874 years AD equals 3416 years. Thus, the pyramid witnesses that the close of 1874 was the chronological beginning of the time of trouble, such as was not since there was a nation, no, nor ever again. Okay. And then that gets revised in the 1891 Kingdom Come, Thy Kingdom Come book, which is page 342, once again, 1891, blah, 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 all the entrance passage stuff that I just said. And it says this calculation shows AD 1915 as marking the beginning of the period of trouble. Not 1874, 1915 for 1542 years BC plus 1915 years AD equals 3457 years. Thus, the pyramid witnesses that the close of 1914 will be the beginning of the time of trouble, such as was not since there was a nation, no. And believe it or not, it would get revised again. And because, of course, what happened was in 1914, in October of 1914, when the world didn't come to an end and Armageddon didn't start, Russell had to go back to his calculations. And then he, in the Time Is at Hand book, is when he switches it to 1915 from 1914. And of course, they eventually settled on 1914, and so on and et cetera. Russell's famous prophetic flops based on the occult, of course. So that is, let me just go ahead and check on this real quick. All right. Yeah. So that was Russell's delve into pyramidology. And the other thing that has been notoriously said about Charles Taze Russell, for the longest time, I just, even though I've always said if it smells like a lemon, if it tastes like a lemon, and looks like a lemon, then it's not an orange or it's not a banana. I've always said about Russell in defense of Bible students, and I myself was a Bible student at least for about a year, I think year and a half. I was a member of the voting member of the Pastoral Bible Institute, which is their voting vehicle for selecting members in what they call ecclesias, the their congregations. The word ecclesia actually means church or congregation. And so they would, all the Bible students still follow the way Russell ran things, which was the Bible students ran autonomously. Each group ran autonomously, and the congregation would vote its elders. And so that's the whole deal with the Pastoral Bible Institute, basically just keeping a record of all the people that voted for their elders in their ecclesias. So, ironically, it was real easy to become a Bible student, a voting member of the Bible students. It was not, I just met with them on a regular basis, and so that's how I eventually became a voting member. And my ecclesia was really easy to join, maybe because it was very liberal from the other Bible student groups. It really didn't stick strongly to the studies in the scriptures. We literally would gather on a Wednesday night and just open up the Bible and just really discuss scripture and precept by precept, and give our commentary and interpretations of what the scripture means, and it was just really plain Jane, really simple, but very it was very engaging to just deal with the Bible. Coming out of the Jehovah's Witnesses here, I was dealing with a bunch of people that we were just reading the Bible, which really I thought was standard for the Bible students, but then I found out that they were very liberal, and most of the Bible student groups were not really happy with how the Washington Ecclesia was running things, and believed that we should be more sticking to Russell's commentaries. And when I went to the convention, that's when I found out really how much they stuck with Russell's commentaries. So, other things that really indicate an occult nature was the fact that the studies in the scriptures volumes, all of them, Time is at Hand, Thy Kingdom Come, Divine Plan of the Ages, on the covers were the Egyptian wings of Ra. Just another example of Russell's fascination with Egyptian paganism, which was heavily nature worship. That's what the Egyptians worshiped. They worshiped nature. All of their gods were either gods of frogs, or even all their gods had animal heads. Osiris had the head of a bird, and all of them had different animal heads. So it was really, and here Russell, a man who was supposed to be of the Word of God, was fascinated with Egyptian paganism. And the other reason why was, which goes to what I was about to get to, was the fact that many people accused Charles Taze Russell of being a Freemason. And where there's smoke, there's fire. And what I mean by that is that, yes, they use the Rosy Cross as a symbol on their magazines, on the Watchtower, which is also called Herald, the Herald. And they would use a Rosy Cross, which is a Freemasonic symbol. The Rosy Cross came from Rosicrucian, and Rosicrucian was a Freemason and heavily involved in the occult. And so they use that, and that Rosy Cross is actually on the pyramid that exists in front of his gravesite in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, at Rosemont Cemetery, and I've been there. And the pyramid was not put there right away. That is Russell, his grave that is there in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, at Rosemont Cemetery existed just as a normal grave marker with a headstone for a while and then later on the Bible students put up the pyramid. And, of course, they put the pyramid there because we know that Russell was fascinated with pyramidology. He was, no doubt, fascinated with the occult and with Freemasonry. And on that pyramid is a Rosy Cross, and on one side it says Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. On the other side it says the Laodicean Messenger. and he had this idea that he was seven amongst a number of seven messengers through the ages, and he traced his roots from Paul to Arius to Waldo to Wycliffe to Luther, and I think that's what was it, Arius, Paul, Waldo, Wycliffe, Luther, and there's one more. I just forgot the sixth one. He's the seventh messenger, and the Bible students believed he was the seventh messenger, and many of them still to this day believe he was the seventh messenger. And ironically, many of those on that lineage, with the exception of Arius, believed in all types of things that the Bible students, including the Jehovah's Witnesses, absolutely reject and deny and believe are satanic doctrines, like the doctrine of the Trinity or immortality of the soul. Waldo, Wycliffe, John Wycliffe, Luther all believed in one or both of those things, including a judgment of hell. That would be a fiery hell. So here on this, you can see to this day, there's a pyramid there, and there's now a huge regional Masonic lodge right there in front of Rosemont Cemetery. If you were to visit, it's a huge, huge Masonic temple. And not that. That also came much later from the pyramid, actually. I think the Masonic temple was built there sometime in the 50s. It's huge, though. But once again, where there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, there's a reason why the pyramid was built near his grave, is because he believed in that pyramid. His life was all about that pyramid, and the Bible students still believe in the Pyramid of Giza as a stone witness for their 1874 date, which they hold to this day. So we have the evidence of the occult, not only around Russell with the pyramid, around Russell with the winged discs of Ra, the wings of Ra on his publications, the Rosy Cross, the fact that he was a Freemason, and one of the spookiest things is that Charles Taze Russell actually died Halloween night on a train 4 minutes past midnight. If there was a way that we Christians actually, there's lots of stories of, the devil's going to come and collect your soul, that kind of thing, from the secular world. Of course, we don't believe as Christians that the devil comes and collects your soul or you can sell your soul to the devil, even though there are people that actually, sell their souls to the devil, at least by committing themselves, doing that verbally and orally and doing all types of rituals to say that they're selling their soul to the devil. But if there was any type of actual legitimacy to the devil actually collecting souls, Charles Taze Russell would fit the bill based on creep factor, the fact that he died on a midnight train to Georgia, on a midnight train 4 minutes past midnight on Hallows Eve, the night where people honor the dead or even honor the supernatural in a devilish, satanic kind of way. It just doesn't really add to the fact that, yes, this man was an occultist. And it's kind of fitting to that type of narrative. Now, there are some other things in the history of the Watchtower Society that really are dead giveaways towards its occult nature. And that also deal with the times of Russell and Rutherford and its ancient history. But I think that the narrative of Russell being a Freemason is something that has become more and more solidified today, not just because he used a Freemasonic symbol, but also the fact that Bible students to this day actually meet in Freemasonic halls. They rent them out. And there's a reason why they rent them out. They're no doubt in good terms with Freemasons. who really don't allow just anybody into their halls because they are a secret society. He also spoke Freemasons' halls and conventions. And I think that when the Bible students try to run from that narrative, that the fact is that, I mean, just to be perfectly honest, people in the 1800s, including a great deal of men in the churches, were Freemasons. It's just really that simple. Is that you had Prince Hall Masons, which was basically slaves and black people and black Christians who just couldn't wait to go to hell real fast, so they wanted to make their own Freemasonry right after the white man made his own Freemasonry. And then you have your Freemasons of York Rites Freemasons and Scottish Rites Freemasons, and so no abnormality was seen that Russell was a Freemason. In fact, it would be more expected that he would be, in his day and era, a Freemason, because many people were Freemasons, even within Christian churches, and that is a really sad state of Christianity at that time. And also the fact that he dabbled with so many different things. So that narrative about him being a Freemason, I think, has really become more solidified, because I think it's possible that the governing body may be Freemasons, the helpers. Definitely are promoting an Illuminati type of agenda and things that are happening around in the Watchtower Society that are now really becoming revealed and out in the open, really shows that this cultic group, you used to have to make a distinction between the occult and cults. I think there is no distinction when it comes to the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society and its history. This cult is occultic, and we have so much evidence of it. So Russell Rutherford, of course, denounced the pyramid as satanic. So the next president of the Watchtower Society wanted to disassociate himself with Russell. He wanted to replace Russell's legacy and be the only and true president and channel people would go to. And Judge Rutherford was as arrogant as they came, and he wanted, in any kind of way, to get rid of Russell's legacy. And at first, the first way he tried to do it was to upend Russell by actually saying, because you couldn't get, people loved Russell. The Dawn Bible students, the Millennial Daunists, the International Bible Student Association really saw Pastor Russell, even in death, as their man, their seventh messenger, the big kahuna. And so what Rutherford did was he tried to pass the seventh book off and say, look, this is what I've got. I've got Russell's last work, The Finished Mystery. And it wasn't Russell's last work. There were parts of it that Russell wrote, but he didn't complete it. And Woodworth and Rutherford completed the rest of it and passed it off as posthumous work. And as a result, he gained the trust of Bible students. And also a huge political battle began, which I don't want to get involved in because we're going to talk about the occult. So here are some of the other occultic type ties that the Watchtower Society has dealt with. And it has to deal with a little bit with necromancy. As I said, Russell died in 1916 on a Halloween night, and for the longest time, the Bible students taught that they were being directed from heaven by Charles Taze Russell, and they've had this teaching that they were being directed by a human being from heaven, and also that they get directed by angels. Now, that delves into necromancy because, first of all, it's contact with the dead, and also this idea that the angels were directing them. That also is kind of creepy, too. So here are some quotes. Some quotes from the Light Book in 1930, Volume 1, page 106. Visible human creatures had to do with that message, yet in fact it was a message of the Lord sent through his invisible angels, because without a doubt these are clothed with authority to direct the course of earthly members of God's organization. So they believed that God would send his angels to direct them. And they continue to teach that type of thinking. In page 120 of the book Light, again, God put in the mind of his people by his angel carry out his purposes. In the Vindication book, Volume 3, 1932, page 250, it says the heavenly messengers or angels of the Lord now used by the Lord in behalf of the remnant. These angels are invisible to human eyes and are there to carry out the orders of the Lord. No doubt they first hear the instruction which the Lord issues to his remnant, and then these invisible messengers pass such instruction on to the remnant. So they believed they were in contact with angels, or was it demons? Another book called Preparation, 1933, page 36, says certain duties and kingdom interests have been committed by the Lord to his angels, which include the transmission of information to God's anointed people on the earth for their aid and comfort. So they were using this idea of angels and receiving messages and information from angels. Ironically, a lot of the cults take this view often. And Joseph Smith, for example, from the Mormon Church, believed that he was given the Book of Mormon on some golden plates by an angel called Moroni. I always say you got to be a moron to listen to an angel called Moron. But so all of these cults begin with this idea that they are receiving this transmission from angels. Even I think Ellen G. White also believed that she was receiving messages from the angels. So this goes into that direction of necromancy. In the Finished Mystery, this is the book that, of course, Rutherford's trying to pass off as Russell's. He says that though Pastor Russell has passed beyond the veil, he is still managing every feature of the harvest work. We hold that he supervises, by the Lord's arrangement, the work yet to be done. So you can see he's trying to gain favor with the Bible students, for them to trust him. So he's saying, Russell and this seventh work is guiding us. He's still guiding us from heaven, even though he's passed on. In the 1917 Watchtower, this is, of course, almost a year and 1 month past, actually a year and 1 day past Russell's death, November 1st of 1917, because Russell died October 31st, 1916. It writes, hence our dear pastor, now in glory, is without doubt manifesting a keen interest in the harvest work and is permitted by the Lord to exercise some strong influence thereupon. So, this idea of being guided by Russell was a very necromantic type of belief. In the 1989 Watchtower, in fact, they were still preaching a necromantic type belief in the 1989 Watchtower. And actually, in the Revelation, its Grand Climax at Handbook, 1989, page 125, it says this: So as late as 1989, they were still preaching necromancy. It is fitting then that one of the 24 elders, representing anointed ones already in heaven, should stir John's thinking. Yes, that elder could locate the answer and give it to John. This suggests that resurrected ones of the 24 elders group may be involved in the communicating of divine truths today. And this type of thinking actually follows Russell's own type of thinking. In the 1879 Watchtower, this is what Russell wrote. He said, "A truth presented by Satan himself is just as true as a truth stated by God. Accept truth wherever you find it, no matter what it contradicts." So, and that really goes into our next proof of the Watchtower's occult history. And not only were they teaching that they were receiving messages from angels and that they were receiving messages from the anointed that has passed away, that as members of the 144,000 are still guiding the organization on earth, that Pastor Russell was doing it, and no doubt that would mean all the other prior presidents, because in the Revelation Grand Climax book in 1989 believes that all the members of the 144,000 are part of the 24 elders, and here they admit the 24 elders are actually guiding the organization here on earth. That would mean Rutherford, Russell, Nathan Noor, all the past presidents, and anybody else who's of the anointed is personally contacting the organization in some kind of way from beyond the grave and guiding it in all of its truths. As the organization teaches, a truth by Satan himself is still truth, and they really follow along in that idea. Which now goes on to this next part of Watchtower occult history. And this goes to a little invention which was called the electronic radio Viola. And the electronic radio Viola was being sold for $35. And if you are getting a chance to see this broadcast online at the link, you'll notice all of these pictures scrolling, and I've uploaded a picture of an actual electronic radio Viola, and also a picture of the Awake magazine advertising the radio Viola for sale. Now, the electronic radio Viola was a type of electronic Ouija board. Now, ironically, you say, well, I mean, isn't the whole point of the Ouija board is that the spirits are moving the little glass pointer, and so it doesn't require electronics? Well, there are different ways of contacting the dead, and the Ouija board is one way of contacting the dead. The electronic radio Viola is another way. I just found out the other day that there are people using other electronic means of contacting the dead. If you're familiar with ghost hunters and paranormal chasers, they use EVP to contact the dead. And the other day I saw there was a guy who I think he had like a speaker, and he had it connected to his computer, or I think a small laptop or Kindle or something like that. And he goes to cemeteries and voices when he's at the cemetery. I mean, not only just one voice, but men, women voices all register on this speaker. And so there are ways, even with electronics, that it can open up portals to the dead. And here the Watchtower Society was selling a bona fide type of Ouija board instrument and selling it, I guess, for its own profit. And I think if you go on YouTube, I've seen two videos where you type in electronic radio Viola, they are still available for purchase today, or probably as an antique item on eBay or something. But you can see it on YouTube. I think just search electronic radio Viola. So here they were involved in a Ouija board type of necromancy. Another item which will really be of interest in the history of the Watchtower Society, and also, by the way, the advertisement is in the Golden Age. Golden Age, April 22nd, 1925, page 479. Golden Age, April 22nd, 1975, page 479, and they were selling the electronic radio Viola there, and I think it was $35 each. The other item in occult history of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society is a book called Feola. And Feola was a book, I think it was printed in 1895. I think it was 1895. I'm pulling it up now. It was written by Gregory J. Smith, and 1878, I think. So Feola was written, and it was, of course, renamed Angels and Women. And Feola is a fantasy story about the flood, and about, of course, angels and women, how the angels came down from heaven and impregnated women and created giants. And C.J. Woodworth, Clayton J. Woodworth, who was the editor when Russell had passed away and was Judge Rutherford's editor, had republished this book as Angels and Women and sold it in the magazines. So, and it's this fascination with succubus and incubus, which is, of course, this idea that there are angels that have a fetish for sexual intercourse with men or women of the human race. Thus, succubus or incubus are angels because angels are sexless beings, but have penchants for one or the other sex amongst humanity. And so they printed this book out, Feola, which is called Angels and Women, and I put a link there in the advertisement, and it's available for reading online. And I'll just give it here on the air. It's called archive.org / and if you're going to do the HTTP, it's HTTPS. So it's archive.org / details / Feola, Seola, XXXOOSMITIALA. So that's the link. The link is also in the advertisement. So if you want to go and get the link for this book, it was republished under the title Angels and Women by C.J. Woodworth. And some have coined C.J. Woodworth the demonically possessed editor. He's also the guy who was selling the radio Viola and was all involved in all types of quack medicine and quack science. So, Clayton was there during the era of Rutherford's days. He was the editor of the Herald, the Watchtower. So that really is an end of that era of the occult past. And now we're moving more towards the Nathan Knorr era. And so when we go into the more of the Nathan Knorr era, we can't avoid talking about Nathan Knorr's big project. And for that matter, Frederick Franz's big project, which was the New World Translation of the Bible. And it was initially in volumes. It was in a set of volumes and not just one book. But when we go into that era, we now have to talk about how the New World Translation was linked with the occult. And there are two people that we need to discuss when we're talking about the New World Translation linked to the occult. And not just the New World Translation, because they quoted this guy for all types of things. I mean, he was actually quoted in the Survival book, which was, I think, printed in 1980. And they quoted him in the Aid to Bible Understanding book. And they quoted him in several other books. And one of the passages of Scripture in the New World Translation that was really trying to garner some type of scholarly support was John chapter 1, verse 1. And so when we talk about the New World Translation, there's two people we want to talk about that have a link to the occult, two men that admit being possessed by the spirits that enable them to write their own translations. And that would be Johannes Grieber and John H. Thompson. I actually have photocopies of Johannes Grieber's book, not the entire book, but the pertinent portions of the book, called Communication with the Spirit World, which was the book that he talks about translating the Bible that he had translated. He is a former Catholic priest. His wife was a bona fide witch, and it was through his wife that he made his translation, where she had, of course, channeled spirit for him. Now, John, at least he had his wife to channel spirits for him. That is Johannes Grieber. John H. Thompson actually channeled spirits under duress. That is that. When you read the American Quarterly that records John H. Thompson's explanation of making his translation, John H. Thompson was no doubt assaulted by spirits. He resisted them in the beginning, and then he eventually succumbed to their will and welcomed them. And the thing that both Johannes Grieber and John H. Thompson, I think, have in common is the fact that they both, the spirits conveyed to both of them that never to posit Jesus as God, but to always present Jesus as merely an instrument of God. So these spirits told Johannes Grieber and John H. Thompson this. Now, what does Johannes Grieber have to do with that? Well, first of all, Johannes Grieber, let's see, he is quoted, I think, for legitimacy. They published an article in the February 15, 1956 Watchtower, where they said that Johannes Grieber was involved with spirit states. So they admit to that there. They actually they denied that they were using him as a source. But here, that this is where they admit that the spirits that Grieber believed in he used them for the translation. Here it says, in keeping with his Roman Catholic extraction, Grieber's translation is bound with a gold leaf cross on its stiff front cover. In the foreword of his aforementioned book, ex-priest Grieber says, the most significant spiritualistic book is the Bible. Grieber's translation of these verses, 1 John 4:1-3 reads, my dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to learn whether they come from God. For many false spirits have emerged from the breadth of the abyss and are speaking through human mediums. That's interesting, considering the fact that he was using a medium. So the 1961 New World Translation uses translation of the Bible as a basis for their translation. They actually printed a brochure called, in 1962, called The Word, Who Is He? And they quote, according to John, 1962, page 5, quoting the New Testament, a new translation and explanation. That's where they quote his translation. In the Word, Who Is He? Which was printed in 1962. They reference his translation, Make Sure of All Things Hold Fast to What Is Fine, book 1965 edition, on page 489. In 1971, they reference him again in the Aid to Bible Understanding, book 1971, page 1669 for support. A translation by the former Catholic priest Johannes renders the second appearance of the word God, small g, in the sentence as a God. So they're using him to support in the Aid to Bible Understanding book in 1971, page 1669. And they also reference him again in the same book on page 1134. And they reference this translation several times in the Watchtower as late as 1976, and then they finally condemned him in 1983 on the 1983 Watchtower. So, and they tried to play dumb. They tried to play like they didn't know he was an occultist and a man in contact with spirits, even though they have a long history of referencing him and also even acknowledging what he was about. John H. Thompson, they reference him on the back of the large reference edition of the New World Translation. He's listed amongst other translations on John 1:1 in their appendix, and also on the back of their interlinears. That I think the 1980 interlinear, which is the purple one, and they also use them on the blue edition. Not the. I think they have 3 interlinears. Of course, they stopped printing the interlinear altogether. So John H. Thompson, Johannes Grieber, and so those are some of the other evidences. Now, in 1980, at Watchtower headquarters, there was what we call the Brooklyn Witch Hunt. And there's a lot of details to that, and I've done programs about the 1980 witch hunt, and I've had Randall Waters, who was there at the 1980 witch hunt, on here, and he created the website freeminds.org, which a lot of people don't use anymore, and I think it's still up. But for a long time, freeminds.org, along with Watchtower Observer, were the sites to go to before the explosion of social media that we have now and the explosion of websites. But most people now, when you're going to encounter witness activism, it'll be on YouTube or Facebook as social media, and on Twitter or Instagram. And the websites are kind of now just a home base, but not really a major platform for Watchtower activism anymore. It's still a good place to reference material and to go ahead and share material, but interactions happen on social media websites now. The things since then that have occurred was 3 things. One, since the Watchtower hunt in 1980, there's been an explosion of ex-witnesses. That is, people have been leaving the organization left and right, and now, especially since the year 2000, the internet and the computer age has really fast-forwarded that. And what we have discovered is subliminal imagery. Lots and lots and lots and lots of subliminal images in the magazines. And I've talked to Randall Waters about this, and And I know that the Bethelites then used to do a lot of little graffiti. They called it Bethel graffiti, where they made fun of the governing body. It was mostly stick figures and ways of them really making fun of their oppressors and their masters. And, undercover, they can, they would mock some of the governing body then. But I've asked Randy if they were responsible for some of these subliminal images, because there has been racy things in the artwork. There's been really scary images of monsters and skeletons and crossbones within, like, robe wear of Jesus, and just all types of subliminal images. And now lately, subliminal images that lead towards the child pedophilia problem within the organization. I think Vast Apostate Hour uncovered within the cartoon, the Caleb cartoon, and also within the print work. They have now children's art and children's, connected dots stuff, activities on jw.org that have had subliminal images in them. And I think one of them notably had a sign on the bed of one of the cartoon characters, and the image actually represents a global known symbol for little boy lover or little girl lover. So now subliminal images actually that convey an acceptance of pedophilia, which there's no doubt in my mind that there is an acceptance of pedophilia in organizations. That's a whole other topic that stems from the first group of governing body members, which had pedophiles in them, in their midst, and were not turned in. And if there were members of the first governing body that had pedophiles that were not turned in, there's strong chance that there are pedophiles in the current governing body that are not being turned in, and they know about it, or they all know about it. It's an in-club thing, and that's why they keep it on the DL. It's on the down low amongst the leadership there. So there's been very perverted subliminal images. And then the music. And at the dramatization last year, and I think the last take of the drama was of them going into paradise. And we're down to the last. I'm going to give these last two things. There was music. We know that the Watchtower Society has an orchestra, but they decided to use worldly music. And it's not that this music sounds, demonic or worldly. It actually is very, very soothing, beautiful music. But there is a great significance towards the message of the Watchtower Society concerning music, and that it imposes upon its laity about participating in worldly music, in worldly literature, seeking worldly things as an information. Don't go to worldly websites. Don't listen to worldly music because it may be demonic. Don't buy worldly things at a thrift store. It might have demons in it or whatever. There's an entire fascination amongst the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society and Jehovah's Witnesses with demons. There are urban stories about the Smurfs coming to life in kingdom halls because the name Jehovah was omitted, and here comes the Smurfs. I remember we had Shrinky Dink. The story was that the kid had a Shrinky Dink with Smurfs, and the Shrinky Dink ran down the aisle and out to Kingdom Hall. So many stories about hauntings amongst the witnesses. And there, I think, like I said, where there is smoke, there is fire. This fascination exists because there is a real problem with demons in that organization. And the real problem with demons is because they are immersed in the occult. And the average Jehovah's Witness is completely unaware that they're walking into dens of demons. So anyway, this is in the Watchtower Society's dramatization of paradise. You know, they get to paradise, everybody's happy, the trees is beautiful scenery, and they had a song by a group called Audio Machine from their album called Epica, and the song is called The Eternal Flame. And I'm going to try to put this on as loud as possible. I hope everyone can hear this, because this is from a YouTube channel called Deciphering Worship. It's entitled Jehovah's Satanic Symphony, jw.org, using satanic music. So I'm going to go ahead and play this clip real quick, and I want you to hear what this guy is, the point he's making. He's playing the song, and then he's going to go to what the Watchtower says.
The Watchtower, October 15th, 1983. In an article entitled, Beware of the Music that Debases. Paragraph 7 reads, the field of music, spiritual perils do exist. For instance, many popular musicians are involved in the occult. Some openly admit they worship Satan, and satanic influence often shows up in their music and songs. But how can a Christian tell demonic influence exists in certain music? It is sufficient in some cases to look at the cover of a record album. It is sufficient in some cases to look at the cover of a record album. Look at the cover of a record album. Depicted on it, you may see characters dressed to look like witches, demons, or devils. Or the cover may have pictures tending toward the mystical or the occult.
Okay. I don't know if you were able to hear that clearly, but the Watchtower here is talking about how to judge music if it's of an occult nature. And even though this song is very, very beautiful, it says all you have to do is look at the cover of the record album, and that it may have an occult or demonic nature. If you look at the cover of Audio Machine's Epica album, it's kind of a human with a head that's kind of looks like a forest. I think the closest thing it doesn't look like a non-occultic type of figure. It looks like some type of magical figure. Probably could pass for Lord of the Rings or one of those type of, magical movies. So, we have Epica and Audio Machine, and they use a song from an album which is very questionable if you were a Jehovah's Witness. And lastly but not least, and this is where I talked about the link to Russell's Freemasonry is there is an assembly hall, and if you were to go on Google Earth, just Google Silkeborg Municipality in Denmark. Silk Municipality in Denmark. It's Silkeborg. And if you notice the front picture that I gave for today's advertisement was a picture of a triangle with an all-seeing eye. It looks like an all-seeing eye, or a pyramid with an all-seeing eye, but the all-seeing eye looks like it's rolling, like it's an eye that's rolling in the back of its head. It's really not just an all-seeing eye. It's a creepy all-seeing eye from an aerial viewpoint of the Silkeborg Municipality in Denmark. And the all-seeing eye has actually shown up in several of the Watchtower Society's literature. And and we see it on on our currency here in America. The all-seeing eye is on the top of a pen, and is usually a symbol of the Illuminati. The Illuminati is normally linked with Freemasonry, and I think that this assembly hall and its appearance and its dimensions is not by accident. I think all of these things are signs, they're footsteps, they are crumbs on a path that leads to something. Subliminal images, the Rosy Cross, the Pyramid of Russell, grave marker, the pyramid in the Divine Planet of the Ages, the music being used with the coming from an album cover that would be questionable, its involvement with occultists, downright demon-possessed men like Johannes and John H. Thompson, C.J. Woodworth's electronic Ouija board called the Radio Viola. It all adds up. The Watchtower Society is not only a cult, it is occultic. Anybody want to, we're down to the last 8 minutes. Anybody want to share any comments, ask any questions? I think I've been speaking for a little more than an hour, and I do want to give anyone a chance to share their viewpoint or ask a question or share a comment before we go off on the air. But I've given all of these images. If you go ahead and take a look at this later on the link for today's program, you'll see the images of the Radio Viola. You'll see the image of the advertisement for the Radio Viola. You'll see the book, Feola. You'll also see the Watchtower's reprint of that book, Angels and Women. You'll see the Divine Plan of the Ages Pyramid. You'll see, I think I put up the Epica album. It's up there. And you'll also see the album cover, with which is the Eternal Flame song they used for the assembly. And you'll also see the assembly hall in Denmark with its roving eye, and next to it a picture of the all-seeing eye that exists on our American currency. There's an entire long history, a long marriage with satanic, occultic, Egyptian, paganism, and it's unavoidable. It's all around them. Is it no wonder that Jehovah's Witnesses have problems with demons? I'm going to tell you, my family, growing up in the Witnesses, had problems with hauntings. And I could share some stories, but we don't have time. We're down to the last 6 minutes about some of the problems we had in our house with hauntings. And is it no wonder why there are problems with hauntings? Because they're obsessed. Their organization is obsessed with the occult and continues to hide, just subliminally, from the eyes of the Jehovah's Witnesses, the occultic nature that is surrounding them. By the way, Kingdom Halls, they're called halls because they reflect after Masonic halls. Most Kingdom Halls have no windows like Masonic halls. And that's the reason why they call them halls and not churches or temporals, but halls, because the designs are from the Masonic halls. So that is today's program on the Watchtower Society History with the Occult. I hope you can share it with others. All the links there, the images are there. If you watch this online, you can see it there. And we're down to the last 60 seconds, but 916, you're on the air.
Hey, how you doing? This is Mikey calling from California.
How you doing, Mike?
Pretty
How's
good.
it going?
Yeah, man. You was talking about the what is that? The demon presence and things like that.
Yeah.
It's funny because I thought I was the only one who experienced that. I know when I was going to the hall, I would, wake up at night, and some people might think this is sleep paralysis or thing, but no, I would wake up at night and things watching me, you know. And since I've not been going to the hall, them things are gone, you know. And so there is a connection between that, you know. It would creep me out, you know. And I would think, man, maybe because I'm watching some kind of movie. I never watched those movies or anything. It's just I was going to the hall. Yeah.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, I think that, like I said, where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's a reason why Joe's Witnesses have these stories of encounters with demons is because they're surrounded in an organization filled with them, and a governing body that is, I mean, sacrificing children to them through their abuse, and it's just it's evils all around it, and they probably are unaware that the source of their attack is right around them.
Yeah.
So we just got off the air, so I just want to thanks for calling in. Thanks everyone for listening. Next week we're going to have from RL Ministries, John Metzger. We're going to learn a little bit about Messianic Judaism and Rabbi Arnold Fortenbaum and the Jewish look into God and Jesus Christ. So you all have a great weekend, great week. Share this with those whom you know. And leave good comments for us on iTunes if you listen to us on iTunes. God bless. Bye-bye.